Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to report out from the closed session. 3.1, consideration and recommendation. We're going with the district's recommendation, and that is moved by Small. Moved by Smolin, seconded by Gibran, with a unanimous vote. 3.2, the same information, moved by the same people with unanimous vote. 3.3, same information, moved by the same people with a unanimous vote. 3.4, same information, moved and seconded by the same people with a unanimous vote. 3.5, same information, moved and seconded by the same and a unanimous vote. 3.6, same information, moved and seconded by the same with a unanimous vote. 3.7, same information, moved and seconded by the same, unanimous vote. 3.8, same information, moved and seconded by the same with a unanimous vote. 3.9, same information, moved and seconded by the same with a unanimous vote. The 310, confidential matter, moved and seconded with the same information with a unanimous vote. 311, moved and seconded to extend, not to extend the expulsion hearing, moved and seconded with unanimous vote.
Now
we
a
go
fun
to
one. Now a fun one.
now a fun one. This is 3.12. Public employment matters. The Board of Education will meet in closed session in accordance with provisions in Government Code Section 54957. Public employee matters. Consider an appointment of a high school counselor. And we're very glad and proud to introduce Lisa Holtz, who will be the counselor at Santa Susana High School. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you so much. I first became acquainted with the staff and students of Simi Valley as a counseling intern at Simi Valley High School, and I remember feeling from my first day that this was an especially warm and welcoming community, so I feel especially honored to be invited to work among such bright students and hardworking educators. So thank you very much for this privilege.
Congratulations.
Thank you and welcome.
Congratulations. Thank you.
And you even wore the right colors tonight.
Perfect. Thank you.
And 313, Public Employee Matters, Board of Education will meet in closed session in accordance with provisions of Government Code Section 54957. Public Employment Matters, consider an appointment of a district elementary school assistance and support counselor. And we're very proud to introduce Kelly Sparks. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me to introduce myself and let you know how excited I am to be here working amongst all of you in Simi Unified. I was a counselor here about 10 years ago, and I am so happy to be back in this new role, and I'm excited and passionate about the things that we can do for the students here. And I feel like my experience here in Simi and also my experience in other districts will be an asset to the community, and I really look forward to all of the work that we'll do together. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
314, Conference on Labor Negotiations, no action at this time. 3.14, the same, no action with SEA. 3.16, Conference with Real Estate Property Negotiators, no action, although we have closed on sections A and B. 317, Conference with Legal Counsel, no action. Public Employee Performance Evaluation, no action.
Star.
Now, we could please have the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Roll call vote.
Trustee Gibran?
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin?
Aye.
President LaBelle?
Aye. Approval of minutes. Get a motion?
So moved.
So
Second.
moved.
That
Second.
moving any fun
Roll
tonight.
call vote.
Trustee Gibran?
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin?
Aye.
President LaBelle?
Aye. Communications, do we have any blue or yellow cards?
We do not.
None. Okay, employment organization, I don't see SEA here, but I'm going to take this opportunity. The last meeting we had, we finished our pre-session very soon and got started very rapidly on the main part of the meeting. And Amanda Hogan from the SEA wrote a very positive statement to us, so we had it read, it was sent to us to be read, so it was very positive. We would like to thank SEA for everything they do and everything Amanda does to make this happen. The employment organization comments, we have none here. Superintendent's communication, we're all going to be very short tonight.
Just want to
Yes, sir.
You're all pretty tall.
Just want to congratulate the board on another successful and productive year and wish everybody a happy summer and remember to keep reading books.
Anything.
Kareem, you're next in line.
Sure, there was a lot of great graduations that occurred since our last meeting there, being at the CME Institute as well as Hillside. In CME High, I was able to give my younger brother his diploma. It was a very meaningful moment for our family, and he's going off to study mechanical engineering at UC Davis, and just a testament for all the opportunities that are provided in this district. So that's why I'm here to help move that forward and keep the momentum. So great year, and thanks for all the input, and looking forward to next year.
Great. Dawn?
Yep, so we had lots of graduations. I got to give relatives from middle school to high school their diplomas. And for me, being able to give my daughter her diploma was super special. I even got to take a selfie with her on stage, which she absolutely told me I could not do. And then Dean May dared me, so I did it. She'll be going off to Georgia to run cross country and track and study nursing. And it's a very exciting time. It's a very exciting time. I'm looking forward to the summer and some family trips. I hope that you all take some time to spend some time with your families and keep math in your lives, keep reading in your lives. There's lots of fun car travel games. I've played them my entire growing up. And I hope everybody has a safe and fun summer.
Also enjoy the summer. Congratulations on everything that happened. And I'm giving directives now as the president of the board that Dr. Poplinsky is going to be going on vacation. And my directive is that he puts his phone away and is not to be seen or heard, and that no board members or anyone else calls him and bothers him during that time. If you have a problem, just call me. I'm listed everywhere. And I will not call him.
You heard it here first. What'd you ask
You're
for?
on speed dial.
It's all right, I can do
This
it.
is recorded, right, Star?
Now, the consent calendar, any items pulled for discussion? I don't think there's any. We didn't get any. All those in favor?
I need a
You
motion.
have to go.
A motion?
Move approval?
So moved.
It's moved and seconded.
Trustee Gibran?
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin?
Aye.
President LaBelle?
Aye. Now, action calendar, board administration, none, personnel services, none, educational services. We have 3.1, approval and adoption of the local control accountability plan, LCAP, and the local control funding formula, LCFF budget overview. Do we have a motion?
Move approval?
Second.
Trustee Gibran?
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin?
Aye.
President LaBelle?
Aye. 3.2, approval and adoption of 2019-2020 local control accountability plan, the LCAP federal addendum.
So
Motion?
moved.
Second?
Trustee Gibran?
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin?
Aye.
President LaBelle?
Aye. 3.3, approval and adoption of history, social science, AP economics textbooks adoption, grade 12.
Move approval?
Second.
Trustee Gibran?
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin?
Aye.
President LaBelle?
Aye. Business and facilities, these are, this is information that happens automatically. They're annual things that we have to fill out and do. 5.1, adoption of resolution approving participation in bids, contracts of other public corporations and agencies. These are called piggyback contracts. Motion?
Move approval?
Second.
Trustee Gibran?
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin,
Aye.
President LaBelle.
Aye. 5-2, adoptions of resolution, certification of verified authorization, signatures of members of the governing board and employees. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Gibran,
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin,
Aye.
President LaBelle.
Aye. 5.3,
It's a presentation
it's
from
a
Mr. Chodo.
presentation.
So I do have to slow you down a minute so we can actually do a presentation of the proposed budget for the 2019-2020 school year. We have two of our board members who actually are our finance committee members who are out of town tonight, so they are not here for the discussion, but they have been presented this information. So just as quickly, we'll look at discuss the process we go through. We'll talk about what has changed with the May revision from back in January. We'll talk about our budget assumptions. We'll talk about a proposed budget. We always need to look at what we call our multi-year projection and the assumptions and looking out. And then we always take a look at the very end of that, what areas need to be looked at and addressed into the future so that we can better look at our out years. Once again, this is something we need to go through. By July 1, we have to pass a budget, and we base it on the governor's May revision. There actually are things that have changed from the governor's May revision already, so we will be presenting the board with a 45-day revision, and we'll touch just briefly on some of those changes. So we want to say it's a placeholder, as we do have to have a budget in place until the state firms up and approves their finalized budget. So some things that have changed back in January, there was a plan to increase LCFF funding at 3.46 based on COLA. It actually is only going to be at 3.26, which is the third line there. If you take a look back at how much money we are receiving through the LCFF and Prop 98, you can see how it has increased through the years. This upcoming year, it's coming at $81.1 billion. We'll kind of touch a little bit on that. One thing really to note this year, though, is that for the past several years, there have been one-time discretionary funds that have come into the districts ranging anywhere from about $10 million in some years to $3 million in other years. That funding has come to an end, so that funding stream is no longer available to us, and we do not see any in the future coming to the school districts either. So some of the budget assumptions, we talk about what we're going to receive from the LCFF funding formula, the local control funding formula. If you notice, the target and the amount are at the exact same place, which means that we are now fully funded. For several years, there have been budget gap closures, so you saw an increase in our funding. We are finally at the place where, based on the budget, the only thing we'll receive in addition is the cost of living adjustment, or COLA, and that gets changed from year to year. So as I mentioned before, the COLA has been adjusted to 3.26% for the upcoming year. Our unduplicated count percentage, which actually does provide us with additional supplemental funds, did go up slightly, 1.65%. So you will actually see that in the supplemental funds, we were receiving a little over $600,000 additional for that. Now, discussing that those funds are to be directed principally to students who make up our unduplicated count, which are second language learners, foster students, and low-income students make up that group. So we do have to design, and actually Dr. Youssef actually has to put a plan together to show how we're going to utilize those funds every year, and then show at the end of the year we did spend those funds on those types of students. We are taking a look at our ADA being funded at $15,788. One of the things always we stop and take just a half second to tell everybody that's our average daily attendance. That is not based on what our enrollment happens to be, and it is based on this year's, or the 2018-19 average daily attendance. That's not about our average daily attendance for the 2019-20 school year. One of the things we're seeing here is our decrease in funding from the previous year is about 262. We saw in 2017-18 that number went down by 295, and in 2016-17 our ADA went down by 217. The nice thing about producing this slide is for the past several years, if I continue going back, we had decreases of 400 and 500 in the years previous to that. So we now at least are in an area where our declining enrollment is, we'll say slowing is a good way to take a look at it. Some things to look at for our budget assumptions: we receive lottery funds. Those are for instructional supplies. Part of it is unrestricted, while others of it is restricted, primarily for textbook purchases. You can use the unrestricted towards textbook purchases, but the restricted must be used for that. We did have a slight increase of about $10 per student on that, so that helps us with instructional material. One of the things we really need to watch is our health and welfare increases. Our rate changes in January. As a matter of fact, those rates actually just did come out, and CalPERS, we'll talk a little later, has made some changes to the way they are looking at our region, and also with the raise in rates, so that we will have to really watch that closely as we look for budgeting actually at first interim. Step increases, that means we have teachers and staff who automatically move up a salary schedule every single year. That comes at a 1.3% increase, along with classified being at about a 1% increase. When we look at our retirement fund, this is actually where the governor's budget had changed, is they actually lowered our STRS rate in the May revision. What ended up happening with the finalized budget, and we'll have those numbers for you when we come with the 45-day revision in August, is they actually took a little of that reduction in cost from STRS and they applied it to PERS. I think in the end, our district is going to actually lose about $20,000 in that deal, although what is nice about it is they reduced the funding rate. One of the things that I actually put specifically on this slide to show is how employers are increasingly having to absorb the cost of pensions for their employees. Back in 2013-14, they slowly started raising the employer rates, and as you can see there, for teachers, which is under the STRS, or the State Teachers Retirement System, the district provided 8.25% of their wages towards retirement. When we're looking at what's happening in 2019-2020, we are providing 16.7%. It is more than doubled in what we contribute in that amount of time. PERS is very similar. Back in 2013-14, the district was contributing a little over 11%, and now we are hitting almost 21%. So you can see how districts have really been taking a hit in that area, and that is to partially to make sure that we have enough funds within the pension system to be able to pay our retirees out a number of years. We're talking 30, 40, and 50 years is what the need is. We always do budget reductions based on declining enrollment. So we have a reduction of about 10 teachers, and we are able to do that. We did that, though there were no layoffs. That was also just based on not having to we have retirements and we have temporary contracts. As a matter of fact, a number of teachers have been hired this year. I believe in the elementary area, almost 30. Some of those are part of Educational Services and Dr. Yusuf's plan to put teachers into classrooms on those schools that need the extra support. In classified, we still have several vacant positions that have not been filled, but are budgeted for still in the budget. So we may not see that cost, because as vacancies roll in, you just never, somebody's out for 3 months, you never pick up that cost. So that will help to reduce the overall budget when it comes to the end of the year. We are now at 24-to-1 in our class sizes. We're at 180 student contacts per day at the secondary schools. We are projecting about a 5% increase. That is something we're going to actually have to work for based on what CalPERS has done to the change in the region. We're going to have to look at some other options as we budget into the changes in January of 2020. And always, as we say, these are always subject to change based on our ending fund balance. We're using our projected ending fund balance. We know that that is always different than what you project, and we'll see that in September. There still are negotiations going on at the state level, but it really should be finalized as of Friday. So
Friday.
Both the Senate and the House have actually approved it. So just to take a look at revenue, where do we see increases and decreases? I always kind of hesitate a little bit to put percentage charts in, because when you have smaller numbers, percentages can go up quite a bit with a smaller number. But we do have our LCFF going up by 1.5%. Our federal funds, that's a decrease. Those are projections once again. We have Title I, Title III, some special education funding. Other state, you'll see a decrease of about 28%, and that has a lot to do with not having one-time funds this go around. Local and other transfers, that's a number that really can fluctuate depending on what's going on at school sites, because actually some of the funding that is sitting out there at school sites is in that. But we do see about a decrease overall of 3.9%. And when really push comes to shove, that 3.9% can be essentially attributed to the loss of those one-time discretionary funds, if you want to kind of take a look at it as a dollar amount. Here we see changes in salaries, certificated salaries up about 3.9%. Part of that has to do with increases and changes in positions, but we also did give our employees a raise. Classified salaries, while it only shows a 0.6% increase, there is some reductions in some positions that have not been replaced. Benefits, though, we see that increase. We talked about a projection of a 5% increase for health and welfare, and then you also start looking at what our pension system has done to us. So that's just kind of a quick rundown of how our expenditures have changed. Of course, a slide that kind of describes what are we looking at for next year as far as the budget is concerned, and then we look at our multi-year projection, because the state requires us to show that we will have a positive ending fund balance after 3 years. So just a few things to make points of here is we have been in an era of having deficit spending. Part of that has to do with when you get one-time funds, you're spending those funds down. We have really made a commitment not to putting those into salaries or into costs that will be reoccurring. That being said, you're starting to see, if you look at all 3 years, we're entering into 3 years of deficit spending, all over the $8 million mark. So if you look at our beginning balance, which is in the 2019-20 column, you'll see that we have about $33 million that is projected to be in our ending fund balance. Now that could go up or could go down as we close our books. But if you look all the way across to the ending balance in 2021-2022, which it would be, which is right here, you see that number drop to about 6.6 or $6.7 million. We're starting to spend down a lot of the one-time funds that we've accumulated, and we also have to at the same time look at, well, are there costs that we need to be adjusting, or are there increases in costs that we can't avoid? There's a great slide in a second to show you that we might have to start looking at the concept of budget cuts. Another point to make, in order for us to show that we are able to have a positive certification, we actually have reduced our ending fund, our reserves to a 3%. The board has actually put in for a 4% reserve and actually has that as board policy. But we put that in so that we would have actually about $1 million left over at that point in time. It's always hard to kind of throw the slide up because it's a projection. We don't know of the many factors that will be going on at the state level, but that does show that we can file a positive certification, and we'll deal with this as we move out into the future if that becomes a reality. So here are our multi-year assumptions going out, maintaining much of the same as we did for our assumptions this past year, continuing to see those increases, though, in our pension costs. Those numbers are only going up and up. 2021, 2022, very much the same scenario. One of the things you'll note here, though, is that legislatively, the STRS rates have been set, although they were lowered. Actually, we got relief from the state. You'll notice finally it's starting to go down at this point in time. But that doesn't mean the legislature can't come back in 2021, 2022 and set different rates. Of course, our hope is that they set lower rates, not larger rates. So this is a slide that I think really shows a little bit of the path we're headed down when you look at our multi-year projections. If we look at last year, this is the total amount of new revenue we received. This is the total amount of new expenditures that we received. So let's move into this year, though. Here is a graph showing how much new revenue received. Here is our projection on new costs that we're going to just assume based on step and column, benefits, STRS and PERS, and special education costs. There's a dashed line and question marks behind special education because that isn't something we can confirm. We still project it, but it's kind of based on a historical analysis of increased costs. So then let's move out to 2021, 2020, or 2020, 2021. Here is what we're projecting for new revenues based on a cost of living adjustment. Here's what we're projecting as new expenditures. So if you kind of take a look, the whole point of the slide is you're starting to see our revenues are going to start becoming lower than what our increased expenditures are. And that's why you see some of that deficit spending continuing out into the future. Once again, a reminder that we will have our ending fund balance in September. That can go up or down. We generally show a trend upward in the $1 million to $2 million category. Once again, the one-time funds we no longer receive, and I said we will do a 45-day revision because of some changes at the state. There is a lot going on, I think, at the state level legislatively that we need to be keeping an eye on. There's a lot of bills that are starting to go through our legislation trying to increase the level of base funding to school districts. There are things that people understand that school districts do need more funding, and I think we all kind of keep that as a positive possibility out there as we look into the future, despite the slide I showed, as I think we have some potentials. CalPERS actually has released their rates a little higher than we anticipated them. We are projecting about a 5% increase. We're looking probably almost double that. One of the things CalPERS did is they moved us out of the LA region and they moved us into what they call the other Southern California region. That region in and of itself has about a 5 to 7% increase in cost just by making that jump. So we're going to really have to take a look at that. And kind of from my perspective and the seat I sit in as the CBO, it really is a time to start really looking at what do we need to do into the future should we need to start making budget cuts. So it's kind of reverse prioritization type of things. Because as you see, our expenditures are going to start exceeding the amount of increased new revenue we have. But you know, there are positive signs. Our declining enrollment right now, actually we're sitting with the better than my projections on our enrollment, so that's a very positive sign. So we're curbing that trend. I mentioned before that we don't know what's going on legislatively to, in the future, increase the level of funding to school districts. So there are potential positive things that can help us in those out years, although as you guys looked, it doesn't look as great as we'd like it to be. So that's just kind of a quick look. We do have a positive certification we'll be submitting to the county tomorrow along with Dr. Yusuf's and the Educational Services LCAP. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions, comments?
Ron, I'd just like to thank you and your staff. And although we give Mr. Toto a hard time sometimes for being the doom and gloom always, we're committed as a board, I know, and as a staff to not returning to times when you know, the budget was dictating so much of our work. And so I really appreciate how conservative of an approach you take to the budget. And frankly, it's a large reason as to why I think we're in a good position now, as well as, you know, the tough decisions that this board had to make to get us back on the right track. So
probably, and this is probably a really good time, as of the end of this week, we are losing our budget supervisor, Sandy Handon. So if she happens to be watching tonight, or people are, congratulations on her retirement, and thanks for being a great budget supervisor and helping us to put together a great budget every single first interim, second interim, and our proposed budget. So she is retiring, and she will be dearly missed.
for sure.
Best of luck, Sandy. Question for you. On the LCFF for the fully funded, that's at 148 million. But that's based, my understanding, on pre-recession levels. Is fully funded in the actuality $30 million over that? Will we actually have our expenditures?
Yeah.
Or
We're fully funded to where we were pre-recession.
2007.
So we've missed all those recession years of having our COLA at that point in time. So absolutely correct.
And I'd also just like to say that there are so many people advocating for increased funding to public education in Sacramento, and a lot of those people are, you know, really well intentioned. And I think that we hear all these statistics about where California falls, and people don't want to necessarily pay attention to the fact that, you know, we have states across the country that give 2 or 3 times as much per student to their schools, and yet California schools still do really well. Relatively, in terms of how our students are assessed. So, you know, and in my view, it's really time for California to do something very bold about the way we fund education. And I get that our legislators are in difficult positions because they, get requests from every agency, every corner of our state. But we have gone now 4-5 decades of being near the bottom of funding in our country, and yet our schools are full of great people doing the best they can do. I can't imagine what we would do if our budget was literally double. In other states, double the contribution from their states to their student contributions. I can't even imagine what our districts would be able to do in the state of California if we had that kind of support financially.
Again, my comment would be how powerful and how positive you and your staff behind the scenes and all of the administrative team makes it nice for us to be able to look at this and know that there's a positive situation. It's being watched, and the watchdogs are out there. We appreciate that. Okay. Now, do we have a motion to accept the proposed budget?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Trustee Gibran?
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin?
Aye.
President LaBelle?
Aye. 5-4, adoption of resolution, authority of Board of Education to improve compensation for certain categories of employees after July 1. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Gibran?
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin?
Aye.
President LaBelle?
Aye. 5-5, adoption of resolution 4-1920, approval of use of propositions 55 education protection account.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Gibran?
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin?
Aye.
President LaBelle?
Aye. Adoption of resolution 5-6, authorize agent to approve application for federal and state projects.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Gibran?
Aye.
Clerk of the Board Smolin?
Aye.
President LaBelle?
Aye. Information calendar. This is information only. Information on Personnel Commission appointee.
Yeah, what is that?
So,
Something I don't know very
yeah.
much about.
So our classified staff has a personnel commission, and there are 3 members of that commission, and the board appoints one of those. And we have an opportunity as the board every 3 years when those terms come up to open recruitment for that, and the board can interview the candidate they would like to sit on the personnel commission. And the personnel commission is largely responsible for working with our classified staff on what job descriptions look like, what requirements are required for certain jobs, those kind of things. So we've had, the board has not opened recruitment for that in the last few cycles. So that information is there in terms of what it looks like for the calendar and when that recruitment starts and when interviews would be. And we do have a few people that have already expressed interest in applying for that.
Okay.
And so that would be coming up at the start of the new year? Or
Yeah, so the recruitment period starts in the fall, and then there are interviews, and then they have to be appointed by the end of the first semester, right? Starts December meeting or the November meeting? November meeting, we would make that appointment.
There are 3 members, one appointed by CSEA, one by SEA, and one by the board.
Not
Am I
SEA,
correct?
the board, CSEA, and then the at-large
At
member.
large, okay.
So that would be something we'd have to indicate if we were in favor of opening up to other candidates, or how does that?
Yeah, so, well, that's what, the staff has made that recommendation,
Okay.
that we go with this calendar. So that's what's provided there for you, so,
Okay.
Look forward to hearing from some people.
yeah.
2.1, Personnel Services. Contract reopeners for 1920 are being discussed now. 2.2, the first reading of the revised board policy and administrative relations, complaints concerning district employees. That's information. Number 3, educational services, none. Number 4, student support services, first reading of revised board policy and administrative regulations 6142.1, sexual health and HIV/AIDS prevention instruction. And number 5, business and facilities, none. Number 10, consideration, discussion of proposed items for future meetings. Do we have anything to add or delete?
No, I think we're good.
None, as I hear. Let's go to Number 11, new proposed items for future meetings. We have none. Announcements. Determined by the action of the board in closed session number 11 of our preceding information, there will be on July 1st, 2019, 5:30, special board meeting, expulsion in the district office. Number 2, August 20th, regular board meeting, City Hall, Chamber Councils, 2929 Tabo Canyon, Simi Valley. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your time.
All right.